Hello and welcome to Focus on Liberia. I'm Ansony here hosting Roundtable Africa, another edition, and I am happy to be the one welcoming you to this yet another edition of Roundtable Africa. We want to gladly welcome you here at Focus on Liberia in yet another exciting edition of Roundtable Africa. The topic for today is, are youths ready for leadership in Africa? Many of us, or I should take myself, I don't think I'm a youth anymore, but these guys will tell me where I am. Whether or not I am a youth, we will get to know. Hey, folks, join us and let's get started. Our topic, as I said earlier, are youths ready for leadership in Africa? Well, on this very important topic, we brought in the man Edward Amara. Edward Amara is the co-discussant of Roundtable Africa. Edward, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Very much, and good evening to everyone who is listening from my end, and good morning or good afternoon to all those who we are not in the same geographical zone. I'm really happy joining this particular program, especially when it is in respect of youth, as I am also a constituent of that particular demography in the world.
Thank you so very much. Also, the chief discussant of Roundtable Africa, Mr. Sekou Kelleh, is here. Sekou, another edition, another beautiful topic. Welcome.
Thank you, Anthony. Thanks to our viewers. We welcome you to this special edition. Today is going to be very interesting. Youth ready for leadership in Africa? This is very interesting. This particular demographic is making headlines all over in Africa, and it is time for us to discuss if they are really ready. So I welcome you once again. It's going to be very interesting, and please sit and then watch.
You heard him right there. Sit tight, grab some popcorn, and let us have this discussion again on this topic. Are the youths of Africa ready for leadership for Africa and in Africa? Because the youth have been complaining, our fathers are taking the giant share of leadership in Africa. So, to discuss this topic, we have a series of questions. Number one, who is a youth? Am I a youth? Are you a youth? You will find out as you stay with us in the discussion. Also, why should youth be encouraged to lead African governments? Wow, I like that one. Youth want to be in charge. Can they be in charge? Do they have all it takes to be in charge? Next question. What will be the advantages of youth leadership in Africa? Will there be some advantages? We will find out. Also, why should the older generation leave the leadership of Africa in the hands of African youth? Do you want to know the answer? Then you must be here. And finally, what are the consequences of the older generation continuous leadership on the continent of Africa? Again, we want to welcome you. Let's get started here, gentlemen. Let me bring in Mr. Edward Amara. Edward, our first question, who is a youth? Tell me, I want to know today.
Oh, thank you very much. I think the definition of youth, especially in respect of Africa, take different dimension. It depends the country where you are. But the umbrella one from the United Nations definition of youth defines youth as the people within the age of childhood and maturity or adulthood. And those people ranges from the age of 15 to 24. That is what the United Nations define youth are. But when it comes to the country like where I'm staying in Sierra Leone, it still defines a youth as persons within the ages of 15 to 35 years and who are developing from childhood to adulthood, who are strong, they have the mental capability to lead if possibility like that exists. They are physically strong, they are able young-bodied men who can interfere with life in all aspects. So the definition of youth depends on the country, but the United Nations definition of youth is just an umbrella one, and it tags the age number from 15 to 24. In Sierra Leone, the constitution considers youth to be people within the ages of 15 to 35 years old. So it depends where you are and which age bracket you find yourself in. So if you are above 35 in Sierra Leone, eliminate yourself from the aspect of being a youth. But if you are below 35, it means you are a youth. If you are 35, you are still a youth, but above 35, it means you are no longer a youth.
Thank you so very much. Let me bring in Sekou. Sekou, same question. Thank you there, Amara, for telling us that in Sierra Leone, the age range, I think, might be different from other African countries. But we hear from Sekou. Sekou, the definition of youth sometimes can become, a little bit selective and depending on who you talk to and maybe the country that you're talking about. So, what do you have for us? Who is a youth?
Yeah, thank you very much, Anthony, and thanks my co-host here. To define a youth, the definition given by United Nations saying 15 to 24 is actually based on statistics. If they based on certain things they want to do at a particular time. So if I want to define a youth, I go back to the African tradition, to African institution, how our society is stratified. So in the African system, we have what we call the rite of passage. The rite of passage is what link one generation to another. So we have the initiation of young people moving from what we call youthful age into adulthood. So youth is defined by many African traditional institutions from the age of 15 until 40. You are still a youth. The age of maturity begins at 40, according to African traditional institution. So you go through different rites of passage until age of 40 before you join the council of elders. So once again, I define youth as someone between the age of 15 until 40.
Thank you so very much. So you don't know what's the definition for Liberia? Does Liberia define youth differently?
Well, the way I define it right now, like I said, if you follow, Liberia usually follow the United Nations definition, I'm sure. But what I just said come from the Sunday and the Poro Society. This is the way youth are defined. And the rite of passage define youth as between the age of 50 until 40. If you in the Poro and Sunday Society, this is how the initiation goes on. And there's a reason for that. We will get to it. Why people should be considered youth until the age of 40.
All right. Thank you so very much. Let's work in our second question here quickly. And let me start with you, Mr. Kelleh, on the one. Why should youth be encouraged to lead African governments?
Yes. First of all, we have to understand that to lead, it's not necessarily because you are young. So being young is not a qualification to lead. It's not a qualification. Leadership is based on value and qualities. Doesn't matter the age, actually. So for young people, the reason why young people are being encouraged to lead is because there is this intergenerational problem on the African continent which has not been solved. The intergenerational problem has been that there is no dialogue between the older generation and the younger generation. The older generation have their own reality, which they have lived for so long, and they have adopted to these realities, and then they have programmed the society to meet those challenges within their generation. Now, the younger generation is having its own reality, is faced with its own reality, and they are pressurizing the older generation that they want to implement things that meet their demands, that answer questions within their generation. So there is that intergenerational clash. So the younger generation want to lead because they want to implement things that meet the demands of their reality. So I would say there should be some intergenerational conversation or dialogue between Africans in order for young people to take over. Because if young people do not have the proper understanding of the older generation, they might as well fail like the older generation. Because it's not a qualification to lead just because you are young. You need the right mindset. You need the right understanding of history. You need the qualities and the values of leadership before you can be able to take over. So I am not necessarily for young people just taking over because they are young. We have young people all over the continent. We have your Jefferson Koji right now leading Monrovia. Is he doing well? Is he doing things that the present generation of Liberian demand? I will say no. We have the son of Idris Deby who just took over from his father in Chad. He's going to continue the legacy of his father. In fact, we can set a lot of example of young people taking over leadership in Africa. All over after their fathers died, they take over. It happened in Togo with the Oyadema. It happened in Gabon with Bongo. But they did not effect any change. Why? Because there was not proper, they didn't have the qualities and the value necessary to address things within their generation. So it's not just being young. It's about the right mindset. Do you have the qualities and the value to address the issue within your generation? And I can tell you for sure that present African youth do not yet have the qualities and the value to take over the continent.
Wow. Let me bring in Mr. Edward Amara. Edward, same question. Why should youth be encouraged to lead? You listen to your colleague, he's saying, well, first of all, being a youth is not a qualification to lead. You must have all it takes, paraphrasing him, to be able to get the job done. He set an example of youth having the opportunity, and they disappointed that population block that they come from. So, but youth continue to argue that, look, this thing has to be participatory, but you have to show the evidence that you can do it. So why should you be encouraged?
Oh, thank you very much. I just clinically listened to what he said, though I tend to a little bit disagree with his last statements. When he cited certain example, I will definitely come with my own counter reaction. Having said that, in the first place, of course, youth should be encouraged to lead African continent, or they should take up leadership roles in Africa. Because when you watch at the population in Africa, it is rightly stated that majority of Africa's population is constituted by youth. And if the majority of the African population is constituted by youth, I think we should be people churning their own affairs, since he watched at the African demography. You see, let us try to bastardize the notion that maturity comes with age. We already believe that practice makes perfect. If you cannot allow somebody who is young to be involved into leadership position, how do you expect to become matured into such leadership position? We have seen on numerous occasions that before this time, leadership position we are stratified in Africa based on age. And that was the type of adage that is absolutely wrong, that I tend to bastardize this each and every time I have it. Because we have seen on numerous occasions that there is a generational blunder into the leadership of Africans. And most of these bad examples that have been said by our age-old generation, who carefully relegated the standard of Africa because of their mentality. Youth are young, they are well educated, they are willing to, some of them are well educated, they are willing to embrace change, and they are diving with the current millennium. Then having a type of set of leaders who do not actually belong to this of our own generation, they do not know what we are taking in. He who takes food by the spoon doesn't know how hot that food is still. You put your farm into that particular food. You are working at the crop of generation who are definitely leading in Africa today, who do not actually know the rigors that the current African youth are definitely undergoing. Because if they had known, they would have been very careful. So youth are very young. They are serving as agents of change, and they know what we are currently undertaking. And as long as the majority of the African population is youth, I think it is high time these people decide their fate. You can't have somebody with a moribund or archaic mentality who is living in this, who was born into the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and ask that person to lead a generation of African who does not know the current circumstances that we are definitely leading. Because we are not born into the same generation. We do not have the same conviction. They have a kind of conservative mentality, not a conventional one that is very difficult to change. We are so liberal. We believe into change. We embrace everything. Even when you watch at the current phenomenon of the change of things into the current millennium or the current world, you may understand that majority of those who are adopted or even to search change into Africa are definitely youth. Those who are sticking to that conventional mentality are people who are aged, who are actually living a borrowed life in Africa. They are definitely not worth to continue leading us into Africa, because we have young youth. A lot of brighter examples we are set into youth. When you watch at Bill Gates, all of them started very young. You are watching at greater institutions into the world. Even when you watch at the founder of Facebook, he started it as a young person. So if you do not give them the platform, they will definitely not act. And to say majority come with age, these things are lie. I think Kelleh cited brighter examples like what he said about Idris Deby, who took over power from his father Mohammed Idris Deby, or Muhammad Deby, who took over from the leadership of his father, Idris Deby Itano. These things are very fantastic example. You also watch at Laurent Kabila, who took over. You watch at Foreign Yasingbe from Togo, who took over from his father. All of these things, we are very young. Let us take a common example with Thomas Sankara. But watch at the timing that they assume this particular power. When you watch at the time that how do you expect Muhammad Idris Intano to continue a kind of democratic leadership into Chad, when the situation that they assume power is an acrimonious one? So he needs to continue the old culture to maintain himself in power, because there are old age people over there who they are watching with evil eye to grab that particular power. So if he doesn't go with the draconian way, he cannot maintain himself. And then you watch at what Laurent Kabila do, Joseph Kabila took power, though a lot of accusations we have been there that he assassinated his father to take over power. But because of the prevailing circumstances by then in Congo, you do not expect him to behave like a free liberal or a democrat person. He must be draconian in nature to take over the leadership power. But we are seeing, apart from being in political leadership, we have seen practically you taking on good leadership role in Africa. When it comes to like civil society activism, they are definitely involved into it. They come into NGO, they're involved into it. So we are saying that if the platform is being created and allow the youth to operate under a kind of free and fair atmosphere, instead of an atmosphere that is being injected with fear, threat, and intimidation, they can perform fantastically well. So youth have that caliber, they have the calibrated mentality to definitely lead, as long as the atmosphere is created for them to lead. There is no need. These people are fantastic.
Thank you so very much. Again, folks joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. This is our program, Round Table Africa. As always, Sekou Kelleh is here, Edward Amara is here. I'm here, always moderating. Welcome. We are discussing, are African youth ready to take charge? Are they ready? But we have a question that we're discussing right now. Why should youth be encouraged to leave African government? Gentlemen, I live in the United States and I've worked a couple of places. For the most part, let's forget about government for now. I see young people mostly in leadership positions. Even you go to financial institutions, you go to retail stores, and all other businesses, you see young people leading. I remember, I think it was Ibrahim who said that during one of the conferences that African leaders or African government have their budget always in billion, but if you look at the United States, that is in trillion. You tend to see that most of the leaders there are mostly young people. And at that time, Obama was in power, and I think Obama got elected somewhere around 44, 45 or so. And also he was laughing at the African leaders. I mean, look at the African leaders, they are all old. And so looking at that and looking at how predominantly you see a lot of young people in leadership in the Western world, I think we all have the same capacity. So what is stopping, this opportunity being given to young people in Africa? Now, some people argue that Thomas Sankara was young. He was extraordinary. He was intentional about change. So Burkina Faso at the time was having a paradigm shift. Sekou will agree with me. So maybe if we should have more of that in Africa, then the idea that young people don't have the experience, then maybe the older generation can make that argument. Until then, I hold the position that I think the youth represent a paradigm shift, because from generation to generation now, it has been the older generation that has been steering the affairs of mostly all the African countries. Let me give you an example in Liberia. The Ministry of Youth and Sports, I don't remember a youthful minister held in that ministry. I might be wrong here, but for the most part, some people agree with me. In Sierra Leone, the same thing. You call it Ministry of Youth and Sports, but you don't have a youthful person becoming a minister. Sekou, you start with that.
Yes, I agree. Nobody will argue the fact that young people should be allowed to participate in government. But my position has been this, that there is what you mentioned, their paradigm shift. But there's a need for intergenerational exchange, like I mentioned earlier. This intergenerational exchange, if it doesn't happen, you can still have young people taking over and doing the same thing again. So what do I mean? You see, every generation, a generation is defined as people within the age of 30. So every 30 years is a generation. So if every generation has its own challenges, has its own realities that is faced with, and every generation create way to answer the questions of their time. So if the next generation that is coming, they're putting pressure on the outgoing generation because they are having their own reality now that they want to bring in. So if there is no intergenerational exchange, what will happen is that the new generation will come in inexperienced. They will not take into account the reality of the past generation, and they will also just come in with their mentality of trying to be revolutionary, and they might also cause more problems than they anticipated. So I said there should be this intergenerational exchange. Let's go back to the United States that my brother cited. Obama was young when he took over. The current president is very old, but there's a paradigm. When you are in politics, you are in a Democratic Party, there is a paradigm you follow called a liberal ideology. So whether you are young or old there, you have been brought up within that ideology. You have been taught how to move. Now, the same thing when a young man joined the Republican Party, they have been brought up to understand that these are the value that African youth are outside. They are now within. And the outgoing generation, they did not make any preparation for young people to have the right knowledge, qualities, and value to defend the state. So the young people see government as a way of enriching themselves. So when you give them power with that kind of understanding that they just need to enrich themselves, you might not see change that you need. You'll be disappointed. There are young people all over. Right now in Nigeria, there are almost 3 young governors. They are very young, but they are doing worse than the older people because they didn't have the right mindset. They didn't have the right education. So young people have to fight for the society, first of all, to have that intergenerational.
So Sekou, let me hold you there. Very good point you're making. So at that junction, who do we hold responsible? Who's supposed to set the pace? Who's supposed to create that philosophy? Who should have articulated the ideals and the values and inculcate those to the young people for them to be able to go forward with? Who's supposed to do that?
That's the responsibility of the state.
Who is the state, Sekou?
The leadership. That's the outgoing generation have a key role to play.
Now you answer my question. So let me hold you there again. What we see is that current leaders, mostly our fathers, if I can pull it that way, or the older generation, if I can pull it, or the generation before us, they do not put premium on leadership. Leadership intends, okay, I will be fading away soon. Somebody is coming after me. How do I prepare them so that they can even do better than me? That is why we don't see. They don't lay the foundation for success. Go ahead.
I will give you a quick example. The generation that took part in the Liberian Civil War, that fought. Today, this current generation, we can see them as warlords, as bad people, but they live in a reality at that time that they were compelled to defend themselves, and they did what they had to do in their time. Now that we have entered a post-war Liberia, there is no single museum that has been built to commemorate the Liberian Civil War to teach the young people that here is our mistake. This is what we've done wrong, and this is what we don't want you to do. None. There has not been any special books being written to teach, to say these are the causes of the Liberian Civil War: tribalism, poverty, corruption. Teach the young people. Then the young people said, this is where our generation failed, and this is what we need to avoid. But if you listen to the street in Liberia, the current generation is acting as if the Civil War was nothing, as if it never happened, as if it was not important. You still have the warlord in the government, plus the young people mixing together in offices. You are bringing up another young people that will commit that same mistake. That's why we have the second Liberian Civil War. There was no intergenerational exchange. If you don't do it, the new generation will commit the same mistake. So the educational institution have to be able to make that connection between generations. the education is very important. Then there must be facility. The government must facilitate the development of youth. A lot of money have to be pumped in youth education, empowering youth. And in politics, there has to be youth participating. They don't have to be, how they call it, spectators. They have to be active participants. And by doing that, they learn exactly where their predecessors stopped so that they can pick up from there. But what we are doing is we're mixing up everything. There is no, that connection is not there. There's no, like I just gave you an example for Liberia. No single museum for the Liberian Civil War, 14 years Civil War. I can't walk into any museum right now and say, this is what happened in my country for me to explain to my son. Nothing.
Thank you. And Mr. Amara, let me come to you. The same follow-up question. Even that look in Liberia. Amara, you are a Liberian too, and there's no community libraries. When Liberia got her independence, right there in Monrovia, you can't go to Balanceville to say, oh, this is the Balanceville Community Library. You can't go to Negruta and say, well, let me go to the library. Something that basic that the leaders of today or leaders upon leaders who have come and gone should have provided for young people to create that culture of, a point where they go and read. It has not. And so when there's this lack of interest in reading, we should hold the older generation responsible. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, thank you very much. As I said, each and every blunder of this current youth generation or the youth definitely should be shipped to the older generation because they are the creators of each and every problem that we have today in Africa. Having said that, let me tell you, radicalism and brutality are needed when things are complicated, but nobody should take them as a garment of life. Most of those youth who are actually involved into leadership into Africa, I think they came in the form of corrective measures because of the corrupt mentality of the older generation. Having said that, if you see a lot of youth today, they are occupying the position of power, but yet they are not acting in that direction to make our democracy, our leadership. In fact, to lead is not to rule. When you are leading, it's like leading, you are only there to supersede, to supervise, monitor, control, in short here, just to manage an affairs. But you must listen to the various articulations or contribution from your subordinate, because you are only there as a head of a particular institution. You must listen to the voices of others. Unfortunately, because this older generation, they are so corrupt, self-centered, and greed. What do we do? If you have a young man leading, they will try to create all sorts of obstacles, because allowing that particular young man to lead a kind of generation will try to uncover all the kind of heinous crime that they might have committed. And to protect themselves into power, they will create an acrimonious situation where that young man will not be able to operate perfectly. As he rightly said, taking into in fact, there is a kind of reading history that is not only corrupted and lacking into Liberia, it is also similarly in Sierra Leone. It is because how our curriculum, our school curriculum are constructed, they are only constructed in a way to satisfy our current leadership instead of saying things like corruption, good leadership. Let me just say civic responsibility should be taught. Your civic right and responsibility should be taught into schools. So by the youth will understand that for you to be a corrupt person, it is actually wrong. For you to be an unpatriotic citizen, it is actually wrong. But if those things are definitely not taught into school, how do you think that the cultures, belief, attitudes, features or notions like that are going to be inculcated into young people who may want to assume the position of leadership in Africa? It becomes definitely absent. So each and every
Edward, let me hold you there. Let's flip the question around. Now there seems to be this sense of agreement here that the older generation did not set the foundation.
Absolutely.
They did not set the values right.
Absolutely.
They have practiced corruption, and they more like set corruption as the basis, as the standard that the young people continue to follow. What we also know is that we young people have been at a disadvantage when you look at leadership. We can agree on that. We know that they have failed. Now, going forward, what are we doing to change that? Because if you look at the voting population in most African countries, majority represent the youth. They will see a youthful candidate and they will not be inclined to vote for that useful candidate. That can be said about most of our counties in Liberia. If you look at the senators, I mean, 80% are people 50 and above. But there have been young people in the race. Young people will not vote for young people. So we can no longer continue to blame the older generation. We are the who make up majority of the population. If we think that things are not going right, why can't we protest? Why can't we organize and say, no, the Ministry of Youth and Sport, we will not allow the president to appoint somebody that even though he has the appointing power, we will bring the president, we'll question that particular decision. Are we doing that? No, we're not doing that. Are we making the necessary demands for better educational system, for libraries? No, we are sitting down. All we do is we go to our party headquarters. The standard bearer is 60 years old, and then you are praising that person because you want to get the crumbs. We can't blame the older generation anymore. Do you agree? Quickly.
I beg to disagree a bit.
Okay.
Because you see the older generation, these are very crafty, selfish, and cunning people. They do things unscrupulously. My father may forgive me if I use any harsh adjective on them, but they are selfish, unscrupulous, and greed. Having said that, you are trying to analyze the youth of Liberia. Okay, watch as Liberia as a nation. You watch as our own. Majority of those who constitute the population of Liberia are definitely youth. And most of those youth, how many of them do you think they are educated? Or if they are educated, what type of quality education do they? Because if you have a kind of careful and quality education, it means you are in a position to judge objectively. Majority of those who actually take decision, if you watch at Liberia, all youth that are going against the current circumstances, most of them are better educated. They know how to take justifiable, if not objective decision that will not only favor themselves, but we also favor those colleagues that are not incapacitated to act.
So, Edward, what level of education do we need? What level of education Sankara had? What level of education? Hold on, Edward. What level of education? Hold on, Edward. What level of education? Hold on, Edward. Hold on. What level of education do these young people actually need to know what is affecting them and to know what is in their best interest? Again, what education did Sankara have when he became president? What level of education did Paul Kagame, had when he became president?
Listen, Paul Kagame is better educated. He may not have a doctorate, but he was better educated with a degree. Let me tell you one thing. If you have a basic type of education, that is, how do they call in Liberia? 9th grade, Sierra Leone, there is basic type of education. That is Form 3. It means you're able to read, write, and analyze things. But again, look at how corrupted our educational system is. This is a kind of country where you set eyes on somebody who will tell you that I'm in my senior high school, I'm going to face in WAEC or WAS as it's called in Sierra Leone. That person cannot easily read or construct a single sentence on you. So how do you expect that particular individual to take a particular sound decision? We are talking about, we've gone at those days. In fact, I have seen on numerous occasions, our forefathers will tell you that I was in standard 6, that is in class 6 Israel. They read perfectly, they understand things, they analyze things on their own. And when you see a WAS student, somebody even in university or college into Sierra Leone, that person is unable to read and construct English on their own perfectly. So how do you expect that person to take a justifiable decision? I think this other generation even managed to corrupt the education system. There is no longer quality. We have a kind of education growth into Sierra Leone, Liberia, and West Africa, but the quality is definitely lacking. So if somebody does not have a quality type of education, of the position of education, that person cannot take a sound decision. Trust me, he can.
Thank you. Mr. Kelleh, the debate here is, getting interesting. Where do you stand on this?
For this intergenerational exchange to happen, you need to put certain things in place. The first one would be the cultural revolution that we talked about some time ago. The cultural revolution is what Sankara brought in. Sometimes it takes one person. Sometimes it takes an institution to do it and say, look, the way we are going, our system is not properly arranged. We are not transitioning from one generation to another properly. It's like we're going in a cycle, a vicious cycle, and we are not actually transitioning from one generation to another so that we can see proper change. In order to do that, we have to do certain things. One, people that are going out of government, older people that are retiring, they should be taken care of. Because usually one of the reasons people don't want to leave government in Africa is that retirement is like a punishment. When someone works in government and they retire tomorrow, you might see them on the street begging for food. The system is not designed to take care of people who leave government. So that needs to be taken care of. Retirement is very, very important. If you want the younger generation to enjoy, you have to take care of the older generation as they retire from public service. It's very, very important. Usually, most African governments don't take that to be important. Sometimes the retirement money is just $2. It's nothing. The person can't even feed with that. It's a very bad thing, because when you do that, then when I get into government, I know once I leave that office, I'm done. So I want to stick there forever. So it should be arranged in a way when you are even in service, you don't get much money. It is in your retirement that you get a lot of benefit. So that incentive alone encourage people to say, look, I reached my retirement age, it's time for me to go. The retirement age has to be fixed. And once the person gets to the retirement age, they have to give the mantle of leadership to the incoming generation. That's very, very important on the administrative level. On the cultural level, it's important for youth to be engaged. And when they are engaged, they will understand that the old people will not just wake up one day and say, let's go on the field and exchange jersey, the young people take over. No, it happened by revolution. Young people all over, anywhere in the world, they take over government, they take over leadership through revolution. Once they have the right mindset and the ideological training, they have the power. Because anything that has to do with government is about the people. Once the people in their majority have the same consciousness and mindset, there is nothing they cannot change. The reason why African youth are ineffective, like I said, they do not have the right mindset and they do not have the right value. So when you even force them in right now, they might do that. I'm not saying all of them, but I'm saying in majority. In majority. That's why they pass around singing for leaders. Instead of protesting and holding them accountable, they are dancing and singing for them. You see, the same thing that destroyed our continent in the 60s, tribalism. You find young people defending tribes today. Why is that? You find young people, the Boko Haram in Nigeria is young people that are fighting in the name of God, religion. It's young people. They do not have the right mindset and the right training. It is the same thing that kept our fathers behind. It's what the same training they received, and they are continuing the status quo. So if the young people are not changed, they are young, their youthful age alone is nothing. It's not about how young you are. I've said it's about the quality and the values that you have. If the paradigm does not change, the human being alone standing in front of you cannot do nothing. It is about the paradigm that you have, because paradigm is like you have a candle. So the candle in the middle of the candle, you have what they call the wick, the something that you light there, the cellophane. Okay, just because you have a candle and that wick does not mean it will burn. You need fire. You need fire to light it on before that candle can be able to do its job. So paradigm is like that. Just because you have brain and you are young, you are like that candle. You need that paradigm to light it on in order for you to be effective. Once that paradigm, like the fire on the candle, is not there, you will just be there like an empty candle sitting down that cannot do anything. You see,
Thank you.
so we have to do that. The young people need the paradigm before they can be able to take action.
Thank you so very much, folks. You are watching Roundtable Africa here. I focus on Liberia. If you are just joining us, we want to say welcome to the broadcast. I'm Ansony moderating. We have Mr. Sekou Kelleh, chief discussant, and Edward Amara is also our co-discussant here. And we are discussing the topic, are you ready for leadership in Africa? This is Roundtable Africa, and we are here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, where we drill into interesting topics for education and enlightenment of the African continent. Gentlemen, let's continue. Let's bring in our next question here. Let's talk about the advantages, of African youths being in leadership, of taking leadership in Africa. But before I can bring you guys into speak, your point you ended on, I couldn't agree more. Not because you are young, you have the energy, is the only thing you need to be able to provide leadership. You are right. We have example of young leaders in Africa who are not doing too good, who are a complete disappointment because they don't have the right mindset, they don't have the right training, they are not intentional about what they're doing. Maybe they don't really understand. Maybe they are photocopy of the old order. Get there, sit behind the chair, ride the big car, get all the women you want. You are a big man. They don't know that leadership is intended for you to make a transformational change, to change the situation that you are faced with. They don't have that understanding. And if you have that kind of youth who was brought up that way, of course, that's the only thing you know, that's the only thing you would do. So that paradigm is needed. And that paradigm, in my opinion, means the right mindset, the right education, knowing what to do, how to do it, where to find the answers, and who to talk to, and you can make it happen. But gentlemen, let me progress here. And Edward, let me bring you in. What would be the advantages of youth leadership in Africa? Because you have been bashing the old generation for setting all the bad examples and even setting up the youth for failure. You are saying they set them up for failure. So let's change the scenario and give the youth the opportunity. What advantages do we have?
Thank you very much. I think I am a practical example because I remember I'm just coming out of college, but during my college, I serve as Secretary General of the Student Union Government. I serve as Presidential Affairs Minister. I serve as Minister of Information. Also, I serve as the Finance Minister till I left college. Having said that, you see, when you encourage you to take up leadership positions in South Africa, they have a lot of merit compared to the demerit that it may serve. I accept the fact that most youth in Africa have in one or two ways collaborated to constitute certain problems that we have foreseen today. It is because of the situation that they made. As I rightly said, the foundation may already be laid for you to become so brutal, and some truths are very dangerous, but you have no option. Rather, if you are very brutal with the truth, the person who that dangerous truth be spoken to, I think he or she can definitely listen. Having said that, you see, we have a lot of advantages for youth leadership in Africa. The first thing, youth are willing to change. We are liberal generation. We are not conventional, or we build up the conservative mentality like our grandfathers who are definitely leading us. Most of them are our grandfathers. We believe that change is a kind of revolution that we must encourage. Unlike our forefathers who are definitely leading this particular, or our grandfather who are leading this generation, they do not believe that change must happen. That is why there are certain cultures that are definitely untouchable into Sierra Leone or in Africa per se. As Kelleh was right, we need a cultural renaissance. But how can you have a cultural renaissance to encourage, if not invite positive change on the African continent, if those who are leading the government are definitely not willing to accept change? Except the leadership accept change before ever anything positive can happen. Europe, Asia, and other, even the Americas, they first accepted that there must be a change into their culture before ever positivity happens. So youth are definitely willing to change. And with the current generation, there are things that are flowing that definitely need to change. Another one, youth are actually willing to set brighter examples, because we have seen that most of the older generation have set blunders that youth are no longer willing to encourage. So for you to make a kind of dichotomy, or you just have a disconnect between what the older generation do to that to the new to the younger generation that are coming into power, youth are definitely willing to serve something that are very good. Take a common example. In Sierra Leone, before this time, under the APC-led government, we used to have a kind of anti-corruption commissioner who was in his 50 and 70 years old, 50 to 60 years old, who was definitely not willing to undo corruption, because he also belonged to that same corrupt generation. Now under this SLPP regime, we're having a very young man who is only in his 30s, who is Ben Kefala. He is willing definitely to go against these corrupt people, the big fish who have corrupted our society. He's fishing them out. That tells you that they are definitely willing to set brighter examples. Another positive one could be like youth are actually feeling the current circumstances that their colleagues are feeling. Unlike the older generation, who are definitely not undertaking the type of pain that we are. We have a lot of things that we are undertaking. The older generation doesn't know about it because they are well placed, they are highly educated, they have the culture, they made the foundation laid down by their forefathers. It's a kind of continuation that they are doing. So they're not actually feeling the pain. They know what if the older generation, most of them who are well educated, well placed into this government, doesn't know what it takes for a young man to live under less than $1 a day, because they are definitely not living on it. So even when you try to explain it, they will never know about it. So these advantages are so numerous. We really need African youth to be involved, because we know it, we feel it, and we have the right to undertake it. We can unseat a lot of things that are happening today with our colleagues, because if you meet a youth and explain your condition, he knows exactly what you are undertaking, and we definitely come to. But an old man who doesn't know what you're undertaking, when you tell him, he say, "Mame, I will come back." That is the end.
Thank you. And Mr. Kelleh, before you come in, let me read some statistics here. Africa has the youngest population in the world, with 200 million people between the ages of 15 and 25. Youth account for 60% of unemployed people on the African continent. We are talking about the advantages of youth being in leadership, predominantly in Africa. What are the advantages? That's the question. And then before you come in, this is the one that comes to mind. I believe that if predominant youth or youth predominantly occupy African governments, they will put priority on the youth. And the fact that the youth also connected to their younger brothers and sisters, which I want to put in the category of children, they will also focus on them because they see themselves as the future and they see the younger ones as also the future. I believe when we do that, of course, we will be, because the youth will not expect the older generation to come and serve them. They not expect them to be the one that send that play and that play. No, they will be looking at their younger brothers to be the one they will send. So the premium will be on them. And in order for the young generation to be able to execute any other request that they will give to them, they will know that, or they will understand that they must have the right education, they must have the ability to be able to perform that task, so they will put premium on them. But now, when you call to the other generation be in charge, they say, oh, that guy, Ansony, he's man now, man. That make him fend for himself. He's okay. I don't know what you think.
Yes. Few years ago, just before I answer this question, it's connected. Few years ago, the president of France, he came to Burkina Faso and said he wants to address the African youth, and so that they can discuss the problems affecting African youth, like migration and some of the things, so they can find solutions. So a lot of youth were trying to organize themselves to go and receive Emmanuel Macron, but there was this Pan-African group that asked a very important question. They said, does Emmanuel Macron have the moral right and the competence to come to Africa and say he wants to address African youth? Can an African president go to Europe and say, I want to address European youth about their challenges? They said, first of all, it's a disrespect for a president of a tiny country to come, you want to address the entire continent, the youth of an entire continent, as if we have no job to do, to go and sit down and listen to the president of France. So when I heard that, two things came to mind. That one, if youth have the right mindset, like those group of Pan-African brothers that made that comment, what will happen? That there will be a disruption. There will be disruption in a positive way. The disruption that will happen, they will break the tie between the imperialist system and Africa, because young people are revolutionary naturally. So they will break that cycle, the matrix created by neocolonialism, to be able to make Africa like a farm where they come and harvest natural resources. The young people are likely to create disruption in that vicious cycle. That will happen. The second thing that will happen is transformation, like you rightly mentioned, because the youth are in majority. The young people will like to focus the development on young people who are in majority. And because young people are in the age of production, they are in the age of work and producing. So if the focus is put on them, you know that definitely productivity will be high and there will be development. So there will be revolution in terms of change. There will be revolution in the economic system. There will be revolution in the way leadership style is done, because young people have traveled around, they've gone around the world, they've seen America, they've seen Britain. They are like, we want to live in our own America in Africa. They are jealous. We want to be powerful here too. We want to have a strong army. We want to have our own air force. We don't want to be subservient to people. We don't want to be servant around the world. So that mentality, the older generation don't have it. They are maintaining a status quo which is based on neocolonialism. So that when the president of France is likely to call these old guys and they will answer to him because they are playing within the matrix. But the younger generation are likely to break away from that tradition. So it is important to know that when we have a young leadership that has the right mindset, that has the right paradigm, they are likely to effect change on the continent than the older generation. Because leadership, there's something I told somebody, look, when we say leadership, the older generation, what they think about is rulership, how they should rule, how they should be in power, how they should walk on red carpet, the courtesy, the respect, the calm. But what is real leadership? Liberia, for example, is 5 million people. There cannot be 5 million ministers. We can't have 5 million presidents. We can't have 5 million elected officials. So we choose people who are willing to sacrifice. So leadership is a sacrifice. You are given that power. You are entrusted with that mandate to act, to take certain powerful decisions that will bring about change in the life of a people. So when you are given the mandate to lead, it's not to enrich yourself. It is about helping an entire civilization to mutate into modernity. When a group of people do not mutate from one way of life into modernity, then no development has not happened. That's what leadership was supposed to be about. Look for strategic things that you know when you put them together, your people will move from one way of life into another thing for good. That's what leadership is supposed to be about. It's not about the courtesy, the power, the red carpet. Those things are by the way. The main thing is, do you have a legacy of transforming an entire generation from poverty to middle income? Have you done that? That's what we are looking for. And I think there are a lot of young people who are thinking toward that direction. And I hope they can have the right mindset and resources to effect that change.
And Sekou, to add to what you said, let's bring in technology as the most effective and most powerful tool today in terms of development across all culture. Technology is needed in agriculture. Technology is needed in education. Technology is needed in banking. Technology is needed in government. Just about everywhere you need technology. And what population of any country is so intuitive to technology that the youthful population. Yeah. Some of our fathers today, when you give them a cell phone, all they do is they just want to call. That's all. My father has a cell phone. All he's able to do is to call. And that's all. But other than the young person with text, the young person is using it for email, the young person is using it to surf the web and read information. And so when the youth are in power, first, they want to be using the internet. They want things to go fast. And the fastest way to make things happen, that's the internet. When the internet is slow on a device, for example, it frustrates the young person. So if a young person comes to power, for example, in Liberia, there was a study done to build a strong internet infrastructure in Liberia. It's about $65 million. The research was done between 2010 and 2012. Sekou, can you imagine? Our government is yet to be able to raise that $65 million to get that done. Up to date, our government has not been able to do it. If a young person is in power, that young person will want to see to aid that infrastructure is built, because he has a little brother maybe in Grand Crew that want to text him, but the internet is poor, that want to call, but the connectivity is bad. He understands the frustration he himself, experiences when he's trying to use that particular thing, right? So much advantages that will come when the young people are in power in Africa, especially when it comes to technology, which is the major tool now in terms of development across all sectors in the world. But let me hold you guys there. Let me bring in comments here quickly. Let's hear from Seattle Townsend. She said, a good point. There's no museum, no textbook to educate about the war, no initiatives for societal healing and reconciliation. Why, she asked. Sound analysis. Studio guest Edward Amara. If Liberia youths are educated, what is the quality of their education? How can they lead? Agreeing with Edward there, making the point, well, what kind of education do they have? You don't just use the word education. If it is not of quality, it's of no use. And that person is making that point. Ha ha ha. I like that. Retirement is like punishment in Africa. Sekou Kelleh, you nailed this one. That person is in a strong agreement there. And let's hear this one from somebody viewing us on YouTube. That is Momba Yasla. Employees should also learn to save their retirement, and the retirement age should be changed in Liberia from 60 to 67. Well, let's hear from Vivienne. Rent apartment for various girlfriends while they themselves in renting houses and have no innovative vision of preparing for their kids' future. I think that person is agreeing with me there when I made the point that this is all they do. Or let's hear from Orlando. Or what is the age that is considered youth? Our guest here defined that basically from 15 to, some people say 25. In Sierra Leone, it's 25, right, Edward?
35.
35, yeah. Yeah, thank you. All right. Somebody said the startup course continuing. Jimmy Eastman here. Internet should be a private enterprise, but perhaps government facilitated. He writes. Let's hear from Jimmy again. Government can do everything. Jimmy, I agree. How many African, let's say for Liberia, for example, how many Liberians really have so much money to carry on the investment? Even in America, the government build the roads, right? I know there is so much money here for private companies to invest, but we are suffering for roads. So if a company went to Liberia today to maybe carry a cell phone company or to build an internet infrastructure, how do they get to ground crew? That would be a challenge. And so these are the things that we are saying. Gentlemen, let me bring you back in. Let's continue here with our conversation, with our questions. Let's read in this one. Why should the older generation leave the leadership of Africa in the hands of the African youths? And then the last question here, gentlemen, what are the consequences of the older generation continuous leadership on the continent? Edward, you go first on those two.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the older generation, it is high time they take the leadership into Africa, because their bad examples are not helping our current generation. And some of us, like Kelleh, you somehow shape blames to some of the youth leaders that are actually setting bad examples into Africa. It is because of the wrong foundation this older generation set. End of the day, when the young generation come into power, they have little or no option, because we have seen younger generation succeeding into the creation of NGOs and other areas. But when it comes to political position, they find it difficult because of the wrong example. We see older generations, they are no longer thinking the way that the young generation are actually thinking. Their generation have a mentality of handling issues are more or less expired now. We are having a type of generation who is technologically inclined, as we are rightly saying. It is only in Africa that you may find it very amazing, but be disappointed, but it shouldn't be a surprise to you where you see a minister into Africa who is not computer literate. So how can that person in fact get change? You're having a kind of youth ministry where the employees of that particular ministry, 99% of them are no longer youth. So the older generation need to quit power, because for everything that they are doing, it is no longer in the interest of this particular young generation. We know what we are going through. We know the kind of dire suffering that we are entertaining on a daily basis in the name of peace. I think there are all possibilities or all justifications that have proved that this particular older generation have failed us. It is because of them that we're having poverty. It's on the increase in Africa. It is because of the illiteracy is on the increase of Africa. It is because of the pandemic is everywhere in Africa. It is because of the diseases that are not worth of killing Africans. They are definitely killing. It is because of them our educational system lack quality, because they do not want to create a kind of strong educational system that have a kind of solid quality into it, that people can be adequately educated and well informed to take over leadership. So all about it, this older generation has definitely failed us. So we are no longer willing to continue swimming into the same system. Let them quit power, let them hand over power to us, so that we can start to lead the African generation into a different way. Most of the challenges that youth who took over leadership, especially when it comes to leading a particular government that they face today, is definitely hammered home by this older generation, because they want to create a complete institution to use the youth as scapegoat, so that at the end of the day, this particular youth need to just quit area. So I think these are some of the things. They fail us. Let them quit power. Let us handle our own affairs, because we constitute the greater part of this thing. It is just like allowing the older generation to lead us. It's like having a kind of minority leading majority in a particular country, and that particular development is meant to go into array one day, because those who are constituting it do not actually know anything about it. That is why even now when you are talking about community development, they tell you that go at the grassroots level. We cannot stop. You start at the bottom top level instead of starting from the top to coming to the bottom. They no longer know what we are going through. So let them quit power. It is right and the left power. Let them go.
And Edward, I want you to conclude with this in a minute. There's a big saying in our home country, Liberia, that it is on the old mat, or we use the old mat to plot the new one. You are saying, well, saying Africa, this continent was founded, it has been them in charge. Where are we? Practically nowhere. The Europeans are 100 steps ahead of us. So we need to get rid of them. Let's change the goalposts. Let's change the players. Let us lead and see what happens. So what is that wise saying from our elders, that we use the old mat to plot the new mat?
Thank you very much. It is just like saying, gone are those days when we used to say education is better than silver and gold. Now education is better with silver and gold. What is the use of using an old mat that has no value? No, this old mat, they has no longer value. They have managed to manipulate the system, cunningly did everything into their own interest. So any attempt for you to use the old map of this older generation mentality to continue leadership, it is like trying to qualify corrupt practices, trying to qualify tribalism, trying to qualify nepotism, favoritism, sectionalism, even religious mentality into leadership. So they no longer need to lead us, because all the examples that they have said, we relegated our society, turned out into corrupt being, and now we have even become antisocial. The social contract they normally sign with their citizens, they no longer respect it. So that particular matter you are talking about, the mark lack value, and it shouldn't. It is just like you cannot light a lamp and put it on the table. You put it on top of the table for everybody to see. But those particular matters are just like a disgrace to Africa. They have manipulated us. And finally, what do you think Emmanuel Macron is actually handling the affairs of France? It is because the old man that they made there, you talk about Francois Hollande, you talk about Jacques Chirac, and other people. They were well old people, aged people who are advanced in age, but they were leading France. But they may have been corrupt, accepted because of one or two that have already been indicted for the cases of corruption, but not majority of them. Their cabinet has set out its brighter example. So when Macron came in, he has that kind of power to navigate, if not sweep within the system, without much hindrance. Fortunately, African youth know you can't come into power, meet a completely corrupt system, and you are forced to become a corrupted person before you can succeed to lead these guys who are actually creating a lot of corrupt Buhara into our country. So I think let them lead.
Wow, that is our man Edward Amara, co-discussant of Roundtable Africa. Basically, he's saying that old mat is like the blueprint that these leaders have laid down. So in as much as that is there, we can't use it because it's useless. We need to get rid of it. And he compared that with Europe, whereas Europeans left a blueprint with them. So if a young person comes, that blueprint is good and they can use it for success. But the map that we have, he said, is like salt that has no saltiness in it, if I can put it that way. Let me bring in our man, Sekou Kelleh, for our final two questions here. And Sekou is the chief discussant here at Roundtable Africa. Sekou, our final two questions that we are asking, let me roll them in here quickly. Why should the older generation leave the leadership of Africa in the hands of African youth? And also, what are the consequences of the older generation continuous leadership on the African continent?
Well, first of all, the older generation will never leave the power for us. It's never done. We exchange their jersey and say, just take it. The young people have to rise up and take it by revolution. Now, every civilization is hoping to have what we call a generation of exception, or exceptional generation, a generation of change. Because when the cycle continues, the cycle of poverty, the cycle of backwardness, the cycle of misrule. At some point, there must be a generation that will save the day. The question we are asking is that can current young people of Africa be that generation? Can we be that generation of change that will save the continent's future? That we are yet to see. In the 1960s, our ancestors, they tried to save the continent from the hands of the colonial masters. So when they did that, they saw themselves as that generation of change. But unfortunately, along the line, they made some wrong decisions, which re-trapped the continent into this cycle of poverty. So the current people we have are people who are maintaining the status quo, and they say we will continue like this. So this generation, we have an advantage. The advantage we have is the internet. The advantages we have is that we have more educated people now. The advantage we have is that the world has evolved so much. We have contact with ourselves all over. Those days when you come to the diaspora, you don't talk to the people back home, except by letters. After 6 months, they get one letter from you. Today, we can see each other from around the world, from different countries we are talking. If the generation of African youth do not stage that revolution that will bring the change, then we might not expect it in another 1,000 years. Because we have the opportunity right now to change. We can change public opinion by sitting right in our room. We can do a lot of stuff. So we can be that generation of change. Europeans had that generation in the 14th century. They call it generation of Renaissance. They set everything and said, we are going out of dark ages and pushing Europe into the future. So it started with a cultural revolution and pushed in industrial revolution. Today they got Europe. Can we be that generation of African that will say, okay, enough is enough. Let us now change the wheel and be able to, because we will keep blaming. 30 years from now, our children will be sitting right here on this platform, blaming us as the older generation. 30 years ago, it was Joseph Boakai who will be sitting right here, blaming the older generation. You see, so right now he belongs to the older. 30 years from now, our children will be sitting right here. So are we prepared? Are we in the right organization? Are we setting the pace so that 30 years from now we will say we did not fail our generation, we did the right thing, we were not dancing and singing for bad politicians. We actually took part in that change. So I would say the young people, there's a lot of advantage for them, but they have to utilize the opportunity they have right now. The internet, the education we have, the social media. We should use it for good, not to be cursing each other here and there. You're from this tribe, your mind is like this. It's not about that. It's about addressing the social, economic, political issue in our country. If we can get together, put our energy together, and have one focus, and one focus only, to kick out poverty, to bring about economic revolution, we can do it. And once we do it, we save the future generation. We save 3, 4, 5 generations to come. But if this generation fail, we will 30 years from now, we'll be in our room watching our children putting the same insult on us right now that we fail.
Thank you. That was the voice of Sekou Kelleh, Chief Discussant around Table Africa. Folks, we are at the end of the discussion here, and I fully agree with the Chief Discussant there. The thing is, we are here blaming the generation before us of not setting the right blueprint for us to succeed. We are blaming them for not educating us better for us to be able to compete with our European partners. Let's ask ourselves this question. Will the generation after us not blame us? How are we changing things right now? How prepared are we to depart from what the generation before us, we are saying, have failed to do? I have one recommendation to you. If you are a young person listening to me, quit that political party. It's useless for you. Because when the party wins, you know where they're going to pull you. Right now, all you do is just sinking, pressing your fellow human being, who and you equally owns the country. You are like worshiping that person. Even though that person have lived many years before you and had the opportunity to create an educational system that will prepare you adequately so that you can be able to live life at your best potential. That is not happening. But you are the one aiding and abetting this very corrupt system that is a complete recipe for failure. They set it up. And you know that. If you don't know it now. And so quit that political party. Form ranks with other youths. Identify what are the vices in the country or in Africa that are keeping Africa behind. Unite and advocate for those things. We talk about technology as a tool that we can use today to change things in Africa. I ask this question. If you put 3 young person in a room and you put 3 other person in that room and you ask them a question to go to Google and find that answer, I guarantee you, on the average, the young people will get that answer before the older people. What is that? Time have changed. The war now is being driven by technology in every sector for development. So let the young people take the stage. How many young people, older people you see will be asking questions on Google? I'm not saying there are not older people who can do that, but if you look at the ratio, you will see that many young people are the one doing that for the most part. And so, folks, we, the young people, I'm not sure I'm young anymore, but young people must be able to take their own destiny into their own hands. And Sekou Kelleh is right. They must fight for it. It will not be given to you because the older generation knows what it means for them to be in charge. That means they control everything. They get the best of everything. And then they give you the crumbs. You don't deserve crumbs. You deserve better because you represent the future. You are the future of Africa. You are the future of your country. That is why you need to fight for it. Power is sweet. No one gives up power easily. No, it has never happened, and I don't think it will happen anytime soon. Final comments here. Government should invest in education and training. That is Jimmy Eastman. Eastman, again, there are members of the older generation that have leadership and vast experience in technology. Just select the right personnel. I agree with you, Jimmy. Jimmy is one of such person. He been around. He been along the technology as far back as the 80s. I know that for a fact. You are making so much valid points, Edward Amara. It is absolutely time now that the older generation gave time for new ideas. We need new ideas. The old ideas have never worked. I am not sure they're going to work anytime soon. The older generation should definitely teach and educate the younger generation to prepare them for leadership and accountability. Why are they going to teach us? That is the question. Why are they going to teach us? Now the same old tricks that they have used at their advantage and at the disadvantage and displeasure of the younger generation. So, well, maybe there are some that have very good tricks that they are going to teach us for our own survivability and the development of Africa. Gentlemen, time is fast spent. Let me get 1 minute closing statement from each of you. Let me start with you, Mr. Edward Amara. We had a very good discussion here, very good topic. Are the youth of Africa prepared to take over leadership on the continent? 1 minute to close.
Thank you very much. I think we are absolutely prepared and willing to take over the battle of power. Yet we can still encourage these old folks to be around us. We can give them advisory position, but provided that we can only take their advice if they are definitely valid. But because of our dominated population, let them give us the absolute right to steer our own affairs. Because he who wears his shoes knows where it pinches him or her. Forget about, we are willing to forgive them because of the corrupt practices that they have done on numerous occasions, because I'm convinced beyond reasonable doubt that most of them are afraid to relinquish power to the youth because of their corrupt practices. The foundation that they have made are definitely not corrupt free. But we are definitely willing to forgive them. But let us be given the power and stay our own affairs because we own this generation. We are the majority. Thank you. Good night.
All right. Sekou?
Yes. The future of every nation depends on its human resources and mostly the youth. The United States was formed by mostly young people. They sat down, they had a vision, and they decided to bring that vision into reality. Europe, as we see it today, were young people, young Napoleon. They were young when they sat down and said, look, this is what we want for our continent. Today, we've all seen that the African Union that was formed by Pan-African leaders, this African Union today have betrayed Africa. It has become a place for imperialists. It's being sponsored by people, by European Union and others. African leaders today are playing in the hands of European leaders. Now, young people, you've seen your destiny right in front of you. Passing around, dancing in the political parties, singing for leader at the airport, it will take us nowhere. The time has come for us to take our own destiny in our own hands and for us to make the right decision. Sound right reasoning is the only way forward. And if we don't do it now, we will be blamed tomorrow by the future generation. Involve yourself actively in politics. Don't dance for people. Make the right decision. Don't make tribal decision. Don't make decision based on religious affiliation. Make sound right decision for the development of the continent. And when you find yourself in position of leadership, it's not for you to be rich. It's for you to sacrifice and push your country into a better future.
Thank you, Sekou. Let me leave this with all of us. There was a gentleman called Comrade Jesus. Many of you who are Christians or religious, you remember Comrade Jesus? I'm asking you listening to me. Do you remember Comrade Jesus? Comrade Jesus, we saw him at a very early age. He was providing leadership. I know Comrade Jesus was very young when he had the disciples. Comrade Jesus was young. And in Christendom, they would tell us Comrade Jesus was a revolutionary leader. He advocated. I don't want to bring the miracles part because I don't believe in miracles. What I saw with Comrade Jesus, he was hardworking. He was walking from place to place. He was teaching from place to place. That's what I saw. Comrade Jesus was young. Martin Luther King comes to mind. He was young. He taught. He preached. He marched. He wanted an America that will be inclusive. Do we have that America? I'm not sure. Maybe we got a little glimpse of it. So to you African youths, why are you dancing for this or other, I want to call them? Because of the crumbs they gave you from your own basket? You are the one who run the economy. Do you not know that? How long it would take you for you to figure this thing out? Look at the population in Liberia. Look at the statistics. If we can all come together and vote for our kind, we will be in charge. Have you read that story? Maybe let me leave you because of time, because that story is long. Folks, this is how we'll come to the end of yet another exciting edition of Roundtable Africa with me, your moderator, Sekou Kelleh, your chief discussant, Edward Amara, your co-discussant, and also the guy is the West African correspondent of Focus on Liberia. We catch you next Wednesday with yet another exciting topic. Check her out. We do it here. Bye-bye, folks.
We are Liberia.